I realized that I began to manipulate people unknowingly to get tasks done. This task is really important, so we got to get it done, and we're going to use people resources to get it done. And I would push people in those directions to get the task done, and I wouldn't care about those people as much as I needed to or wanted to. But some of those insights, then I got to work on those muscles too, which led to that story of sitting down and taking off my hat. So I think maybe I've improved a little bit along the way.
For sure. It's hard to like see the growth of personal growth, of leadership growth. It's only when you really look back and you or conversations come to your memory and you're like, wow, I didn't handle that. Or I've
Yeah.
heard clients say like, oh, my heart breaks from the former version of myself. I'm like, yep, that's every single human. On today's episode of Think Outside the Boss, I interview Paul Spence, who is the Chief Development Officer of Pillar Media, which is a national Christian media company that includes radio stations like Star 93.3 in Cincinnati and 107 Flow in Denver. And Paul has such a rich experience in leadership. He talks about when he was 12 years old, he was voted, like actually elected the leader of a breakdancing group. Stick around for that conversation. But he also has this rich history in faith-based nonprofit. In his mid-20s, he was the executive director of a homeless shelter and talks about how they moved into a new building. And then he served at City Gospel Mission as the VP of development for 19 years. So Paul talks about the difference between what is it like to work for a for-profit company and a nonprofit company? What does leadership look like in those two scenarios? Finally, Paul shares a couple times when he really had to hear constructive criticism. And he's a guy that doesn't just ask for it to check a box. He shares about how he really had to look in the mirror and realize, wow, I think what they're saying is true. Now, what do I do about it? And he took action, and it's was part of his journey in becoming the leader he is today. So with that, Paul Spence, welcome to Think Outside the Boss.
Oh, thank you, Katie. It's an honor to be here.
So this isn't typically my first question, but you've got to explain. You're 12 years old
Yeah.
and you are elected as leader of a breakdance group.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thrust into leadership positions. So God had kind of placed me there, and then I always seemed to be captain or coach or leader or president or of clubs and organizations. That was my launch into it. But yeah, I was flexible when I was 12, and I was a pretty good break dancer back then. I cannot show my kids today what it meant to break dance, but yeah, a thing of the past.
Is there any video?
I don't think we had video cameras. I'm old enough that if it was really grainy and
Like the camcorder that you
yeah,
have to hold. Yeah, I grew up on
exactly.
VHS. I know. My favorite movies when I was younger were Breakin' and Breakin' 2.
Okay.
So
Nice.
that is what I'm picturing. Is that what it was like?
It was. The crab crawl, the spinning, the wave, all that kind of moves and things. I looked like a robot when I moved around the dance floor, and yeah, it was fun.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. That is like one of the best facts I have ever heard about someone. So now, as you mentioned in that, that was like your first foray into
Yeah.
leadership. So one of the questions I ask every guest on the show is like, when did you realize that you were a leader?
Yeah, it wasn't really until college when I reflected back on all the positions that God had put me in with soccer teams and clubs and things like that. We saw a real need on our campus for a Christian fraternity. And so myself and another classmate prayed about it, and we decided, hey, this is something that we believe God is putting on our heart. And so I was already the president of Fellowship Christian Athletes. I was the captain of the tennis team, and I was like, why not one more thing? Because I don't like to study, so we'll try this fraternity thing. But it was at that moment I was like, man, God has really put me in a lot of leadership positions throughout my life, and it's continued into my 50s.
What does leadership mean to you?
For me, and it's a little bit different from everyone else. I love, Maxwell and Lencioni and all those guys and their definitions of leadership. For me, it's more of a coach's mentality because I've loved sports all my life. I've played sports all my life, and I love being the coach that inspires players to be better. And so for me, it is how can I elevate the people around me? How can I come into that coaching style that really benefits the team to elevate them? Because at the end of the day, it's the players on the field that get the results.
Mhm.
It's a little bit about the coaching and a lot about the players. And so for me, that's my mentality and my approach.
In all of your experience, and you can pick from anyone, where is a time when you really hit a wall when it came to leading others and you just thought to yourself, I've got to do something different?
My first serious roadblock was I was in my late 20s. I was running a homeless rescue mission back in Nebraska. And we were moving from a building that was about 8,000 square foot and it was run down, and people shouldn't even been living in this situation. But we had successfully done a large capital campaign and we were about to move into a building that was 8 times the size. So we're going from about 8,000 square foot to almost 60,000 square feet. And we were looking at this going, okay, this is a great opportunity. We're going to be able to do all these things and serve more people. But then I saw this look of fear in my staff's eyes as we began to talk about that. And I realized that they were comprehending this large move. At the same time, they were thinking, oh my gosh, what does this mean? How are we going to operate? We've never done it this way. And so thinking about those kinds of fears, I decided, let's give them an opportunity to be in that space and to do some trial runs. And so as soon as we were out of the hard hat, the phase of the building campaign, I started to tell the team, hey, let's meet on Saturday mornings, and it's completely optional. I'm going to bring breakfast in, and we're just going to talk through how to operate this building. And anticipating that a few people would show up, I went into the first Saturday and I had food for about half the team, and the whole team showed up. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to really start stepping up my game on breakfast. But they all showed up and they wanted to walk through. And so we started saying, okay, let's go through a lunch hour and what it means to like call people for lunch and how we're going to do men and women and families. And are we going to have one meal time? We're going to have 3 meal times. What's this going to be like? How are we going to do med calls? How are we going to keep security in the building? How are we going to do check-ins? How are we going to operate just on a daily basis as people are walking through the building and getting to their case management appointments and everything? And then they started coming up with, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to do that? And so for almost 2 months, we met on Saturday mornings and we figured out how to operate in this new space before we even got there. And we had to figure out some hiccups and things like that when we actually moved in, things we didn't anticipate, but we were much better prepared for it. And I saw a sense of relief and excitement from the staff the day we moved in rather than fear.
So, how many people were on the team?
There were about 10 people at that time on the team. And honestly, that was one of the things we identified was we don't have enough staff to cover this building. We hadn't even anticipated having to hire very quickly after we moved into the new building, which was great insight that my staff was able to give me.
So, you're in your 20s, right?
Yep, mid-20s, yeah.
Okay, you're in your mid-20s.
Yeah.
What is your role? Are you like leading the homeless
I was
shelter
the
or you're
executive director, yep, yep,
executive director of a homeless shelter in your
yeah,
mid-20s?
yep. Never
Moving
having gone into nonprofit. It was my first venture in a nonprofit too, so it
first
was
venture in nonprofit,
ooh,
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you've got this team of 10 people and you're moving to a new location. Did you have a mentor? Because I gotta think while you're like, it was a good gut instinct to like call that Saturday morning meeting, but like that's a huge thing. So I see how you were helping get your team through it. How were you getting yourself through it?
I was getting myself through it by leading. I mean, that part of my joy is seeing the staff flourish, right? And
Yeah.
when they're so capable of great things and then they accomplish great things, I get a lot of self-satisfaction of saying I helped them get there. It was a joy for me to add that extra day of work to try and come and be prepared. And then the excitement of the staff was just it was enthralling. I mean, they were embracing it. And I don't know where I came up with it. Yeah, it definitely a God breathed in some dream or something that gave me the wisdom to be able to do something like that. Yeah.
So take us back to that first meeting, or
Yeah.
it could even be the second, but take us back to that meeting. So you're there and you're like, oh, got some donuts, a couple people will show up. We'll just talk through it. What happened when you saw all 10 people? How did you run the meeting when you saw that this was an impromptu thing and then suddenly everybody showed up?
Thankfully, I had a little bit of an agenda, but everybody showed up and I just took a moment to celebrate. I said, we have talked about these kinds of moments for a long time. It had been about 6 years that we had been thinking about and planning for and praying for this move to this building, and just sitting there and celebrating with the staff and just saying, no, we're on the doorstep of this. You guys have helped us get here. This is the vision that we've been working toward. Isn't this an incredible moment for us to, and so let's just take it in. There's a little bit of paint on the walls. The carpet's not laid. There's a lot of work yet to be done in this building. Let's just take it in. Take it in
Mhm.
for a moment that God has given us favor to get to this point. And so we started with thankfulness.
I love that because I don't know that a lot of people would have started there. I think it would be like, well, let's dive in. And the fact that you started with celebration, like, y'all are here, casting the vision, and you started with celebration, you started with gratitude. I think that's incredible. So you had some experience in the for profit world and then most of your career in the nonprofit world. And I've been in both as well. And before I was in nonprofit, I always had a heart for it. I spent most of my career in the for profit industry and private companies, public companies, you name it, startups. And when I went to nonprofit, before I launched my own company, I had a heart for it. I was excited. I'm like, oh, yay, there's a mission, there's meaning. And then I got into it, and a nonprofit is just another company. There's a lot of mission, there's a lot of meaning to it.
Yeah.
But what I mean by that is like there's still conflict, or if nothing else, I think people were almost nicer and maybe more conflict avoidant. Did you experience that in the nonprofit world, or were there any big differences between like nonprofit and for profit?
Yeah, major differences, right? I mean, the pace is one of the things. You go into nonprofit, it's like, okay, we don't have the resources to go do that. So we have to raise the resources and wait on things. And most people are doing 4 or 5 jobs at one time. And so the pace is completely different. I had to learn that right away. Definitely what you spoke about, the conflict avoidance, people trying to be too nice, because especially in faith-based nonprofits, it's avoiding conflict, or trying to treat it as, oh, this is just going to pass by. We don't have to worry about that. God's going to take care of that. It's even more so that people need to be real with each other and give an opportunity and permission to be real and say, look, I'm struggling. I'm having a bad day. You said something in that meeting that I took offense to. I need to clear my heart. So I think, especially in the faith-based space, that needs to be done even more. And so leaders have a responsibility to give permission to their teams to speak up and say, how are you really feeling? Because there's a lot of times too in faith-based nonprofits that people feel allowed to bring their home problems to work, where that doesn't happen in the corporate space, right? If somebody's getting a divorce or somebody has a death in the family, you're supposed to come to the corporate space and just be, hey, it's business as usual. You took your day off to mourn. It's back to work. In the
Mhm.
nonprofit space, especially the faith-based, there's that, Sally has a sad face. What's going on with her? Oh, well, she just lost her brother. She just lost her mother, and we need to give her some space. And so there's that combination of, okay, I need to go care for Sally, but then Sally needs to do her work too. And so
Mhm.
it's a delicate balance when it comes to nonprofit, about giving people permission to speak into that, wearing that hat of compassion, addressing the issues, but then also saying, hey, I love you. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to give you some space. At the end of the day, how do we together help you get your work done, because we still have to deliver too?
Yeah. So part of this podcast too, I love the insights and also getting into some of the weeds of like, what were your specific actions? Like for the leaders that are listening today that aren't in nonprofit, but they don't want to be the like, okay, you had your day off, now get back to work. Like you had your 4 hours of bereavement leave
Yeah.
and now show up again. So they're not quite in that space, but they do want to open it up, and they want people to show up fully as themselves, which does include not only celebration and joy, but it does include grief and trauma. What are some steps, or like what are ways that they can do that, especially if they don't work in a faith-based organization and it might be taboo?
I think a lot of the rules and approach are the same, whether you're in secular or nonprofit, whether you're in business. It doesn't matter the platform. It really comes down to how do you treat people. And I'll tell you a scenario that I would have done regardless of if I was in a for-profit, nonprofit, faith-based, secular. I was told that I could make some structural changes on my team because I really needed to create some more middle management to take some pressure off of me as I was trying to do too much and had way too many direct reports. So I was told that I could elevate someone to a higher position and we would change the title, but there was going to be no compensation with it too. We were just asking them to rise to another position, be in leadership, have a team under them, and we would change their title, and then potentially compensation would come in the next 6 months or a year if the money was there. And so I went to this person and I sat down with them and I said, hey, would you be willing to? The team needs you. The organization needs you to step up and take this role. How do you feel about that? Are you willing to do this? And this person said, I did this in a previous role and I was not treated well. There was no compensation and I was overworked and I felt lesser about the organization that I was working for. And in fact, even that's what led to me leaving. And I don't want to put myself in that position. I'm worth more if you're asking me to do this. And so I have to dig my feet in and say, I will accept if you pay me. And so in that meeting, I said, I'm going to lean in and I'm going to take my supervisor hat off. And here's my friend hat. Good for you. Don't change this position. You should stay steadfast to this. And so I think it's a balancing act of being in those dual roles, but then letting your staff know too, hey, this is the hat that I'm wearing. I'm going to wear the boss's hat right now. I'm going to wear the supporter's hat right now. I'm going to wear the friend hat right now. And I think it's okay to be those different people, but let them know too, clearly where you're coming from. And that probably goes right to communication, right? Which is part of leadership is communicate well and let people know, understand exactly where you're coming from and exactly your expectations.
Yeah. And don't sugarcoat it for sure.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
that example, did that person, they did not end up taking,
Did not.
okay. How did your leadership reply to that? What happened after that?
I have experienced a lot of different types of leaders, right? And some I learned from and say I want to emulate that, and some I look back on and say I'm not going to act like that. And so in this particular case, leadership said, "Well, if that didn't work, then find a solution." And so I was left to come up with a solution.
So what was the solution?
I just continued to take on too much work because I didn't see one without proper resources and without trying to do that again, which I felt was wrong to another member of my team. I was asking them to do the same thing that I was experiencing, take on more with no pay, and I wasn't going to do that. And so in this case, I took one for the team and I bear the brunt of that and continue to work probably too hard. And in hindsight, I should have set better boundaries for myself and taken a little more personal care.
I appreciate you sharing those details because this is a very real scenario, especially in larger companies. I relate, I think of an exact situation where I did do something very similar where I had to tell someone like she was going to relocate or there was a job she wanted to take where she'd be reporting to me and she didn't want to relocate. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't need to. But the company was like, no, she has to. And I was like, I can't in good faith tell you I can't do it. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that because it is so common. It's so relatable. And the other thing too that you did really well that I want to call out for the audience listening is that when you said you put on those different hats, and that is so important because people we all wear a lot of hats, but when you're the leader of the team, like when you're the boss, I mean, people tend to only see you as that or that is your primary role.
Yeah.
And so in that situation, when you actually said, I'm taking off my leadership hat and I'm putting on my friend hat, or you could say, hey, I'm not your boss right now. I'm not your manager, but as your friend, let me tell you this. I've also, to just build on that for the people listening, I've also seen leaders do that really well in just everyday meetings of, hey, I'm offering this suggestion as a member of this team, not as the leader of it. So I want your input on it. I'm offering an idea, not a directive. So I love that you used that, and it sounds like it made a huge difference in that conversation.
Well, I like what you just said, and I'm going to borrow that from you. So as a member of this team, I'm putting on it. I like that. That's great.
I know one of your teams had done Working Genius before, and that's something too where the leader has twice the impact of anyone else's presence, of anyone else's decision. And sometimes we say things as leaders and we're like, no, I'm part of the, like, I'm saying this isn't part of the team, or I'm saying this out of invention and not like I'm just providing an idea. So it's really helpful. And although people will feel cheesy doing it, like you could feel cheesy doing it, but lean into it. It's really helpful. I mean, you've had such a diverse set of experiences and a lot of really like meaty leadership roles. When you like look back over it, what was the time when you had to look in the mirror and realize I need to change and I need to do something? Like it's not the team, it's me.
I like all of the assessments, right? The Working Genius, the Myers-Briggs, the DISC, the Enneagram. I mean, all those give you certain insights to who you are, and you got to use them to a point. It shouldn't define you, and you shouldn't operate according to, if I'm that 2 on the Enneagram, that's how I behave all the time. But it does frame it and inform. And I think I was in my mid-30s when I realized, and something you just alluded to with the voice of the leader, that when I was requesting things, somebody had told me that, hey, when you came to us and you asked us to do something and you were trying to be gentle about it, you don't have a gentle voice. And it was amazing to look in the mirror and then to reflect on even my marriage and being a father. It was like, if that's true, then when I think I'm being soft and nurturing, I'm not being soft and nurturing. And I asked a lot of people to give me feedback on that. And majority of people said, yeah, you don't have a really soft side. It's kind of a
Yeah.
hard soft. And it was a blind spot. It was,
It's not over easy.
yeah, but it was a blind spot for me. And I have always loved constructive criticism because that's how we grow. And so I leaned into that to say, okay, how do I become more empathetic and soft? And I realized that I began to manipulate people unknowingly to get tasks done. This task is really important, so we got to get it done, and we're going to use people resources to get it done. And I would push people in those directions to get the task done, and I wouldn't care about those people as much as I needed to or wanted to. But some of those insights, then I got to work on those muscles too, which led to that story of sitting down and taking off my hat. So I think maybe I've improved a little bit. What?
For sure. It's hard to like see the growth of personal growth, of leadership growth. It's only when you really look back and or conversations come to your memory and you're like, wow, I didn't handle that. Or I've
Yeah.
heard clients say like, oh, my heart breaks from the former version of myself. I'm like, yep. That's every single human. So before we go into the lightning round, what advice would you give to leaders now in 2026?
I loved feedback. I love coaching. I love leaning into mentors and mentorship and things. Constructive criticism is huge. One of the things that I was not good at was really studying and reading. And now that you've got all of these leadership materials at your fingertips and podcasts and everything else, I would encourage people to be a learner. And even if that's not your forte, find what speaks to you that can continue to help you grow, because we've never arrived as leaders. I still look at leadership approaches and I see people do things. I'm like, ooh, I want to do that better, or I want to do that like they're doing it. And so I'm still on that journey and that path of learning and reading and consuming. I love, like I said, Patrick Lencioni and John Maxwell, those are the old ones, but then there's these books by Chip and Dan Heath that are fantastic about Switch and Made to Stick.
Switch is one of my favorites. It's back
The
there
Power
somewhere.
of Moments, one of their new books, is,
Hmm.
is fantastic. And Will Guidara that wrote Unreasonable Hospitality.
Hmm.
Todd Bolsinger writes Canoeing the Mountains, and Katie, I wouldn't even be able to tell you book titles 4 years ago, but I
Hmm.
leaned into that, and man, has it been fruitful just to sit down and highlight. I don't sit down with a book without a highlighter and a pen and writing thoughts in the margins now, and that's not something I would have done. And so I would encourage people: what is your style of learning? and lean into that. We should not ever feel like we've arrived. We can always get better.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I also sit down with a highlighter and a pen and mark up books for sure. And I think it's a part of like one of the like wonderful things about the world today with so many more books being published and podcasts is like there's more voices to listen to. Education just doesn't end when you get your degree, if you get a degree. It's like it's an ongoing thing. And so
It
there's a
is.
lot of beauty and a lot of good stuff in that. Cool. Paul, are you ready for the lightning round?
Okay, what do I win if I answer correctly?
There's no right or wrong answers.
Okay, good.
These are just the same 5 questions that I ask every guest on the
Okay.
show. The first one is, what is your favorite personality assessment?
I gotta say, Working Genius now, and I like them all. I really like Working Genius because it kind of takes you through a project from start to finish, and it allows you with that wonder and that innovation, and then you've got your D's saying why you can or can't do this, and what kind of resources you need, and you've got the galvanizer saying let's go, and you've got the E's saying, let's engage, let's enable, let's get this project done. And then you've got the T's, which I am not. That's my frustration saying, and I'm always looking to the T's going, is it done? Is it done? Can we move on? Can we do the next? So I love the Working Genius because you really can tackle projects with that model.
Yeah, I love it. I'm biased in that one, but
Yeah. Good
I
one.
hope you didn't say it because of me, but thank you.
No,
I'm a
no,
huge
but
fan.
the trainer we had was fantastic, and she has your same name. I don't know where yeah, she was fantastic. Yeah.
That's awesome. Question number 2. What is a book that was instrumental in your life?
There's so many now, but one that really shaped my leadership and I stand by is Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage. I think
Ah,
every leader should read that.
yes. I call it the business Bible. And my copy is full of post-it notes and highlights and marker like
Yeah, good book.
yeah. I don't just read it, I implement it. Number 3, what is the best advice you've ever received?
There's so much in there too, but early on in my childhood, my dad had a sticky note on his bed, and it's super cheesy, but it just always kind of shaped me and the way that I would approach things, and it's just simply said, I don't know who to attribute this to, but those that have never failed have never tried.
So true.
You know,
So true.
I could thank my father for a post-it note on that one.
Yes. Oh, and that leads perfectly into the fourth question, which what is a failure that you cherish?
Which one?
I
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
right? So many for all of us.
yeah.
What a
You know,
great attitude, by the way, to have about failure.
yeah.
You're like, which
Well,
one?
yeah, and how fast can you fail and what can you learn from it? And those are two things because I I love taking tactical chances and trying new things. And so many times we would try things and fail and learn from them. My people failure, my biggest people failure, I'll talk about that because there's a lot of tactical failures that don't fit this podcast. But one that really resonates with me and that I learned from is that when I was at odds with someone that reported to me, I I really don't enjoy conflict, extended conflict. I will approach a problem, I'll address a problem in real time. I have no problem, pulling somebody aside and saying, "Hey, there's an issue with this, there's a problem with this." What's difficult for me is when somebody and I are not right and there's tension between the two of us on an extended period. And so I went too far in trying to repair the relationship when it wasn't repairable from their side. I try to do
Mm,
my work and their work, and I made it worse.
yep.
And so what I realized through that is I can do my part, and the rest is up to them, and I got to
Mhm.
be okay with it.
That's such a good lesson, a good lesson, a hard lesson to learn is like
Very
you
hard.
can't control other people. That's a whole other podcast we can have on that conversation. But yes, that's good stuff. All right, the last question of the lightning round and my personal favorite. So, since you're a sports guy, let's say you're going onto the field, your name is called. What is your walk-on music? What's your hype song as you go onto the field?
Yeah, my hype song, it'd be back in the day, this is an oldie but a goodie, but I loved DC Talk's Jesus Freak. So
Nice.
that would be my hype song. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Paul, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Before we go, why don't you share with us where can people find you if they want to follow you? Talk about what you're doing, anything you want to promote. This is your time.
Yeah. Well, I would say, hey, I'm a little biased now because I absolutely love my new position at Pillar Media, but Star 93.3 FM in Cincinnati is a fantastic station. You can download it on your smart TV. You can download it as an app. We also have The Flow, 107.1 in Denver, but that's also an app. So if anybody's interested in Christian hip hop, it's super cool. The Flow.
Yes.
Yes, it's awesome. But if anybody wants to talk to me and talk leadership, I love it because I can learn from you too. But I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out to me.
Awesome. And we will link to all of that in our show notes as well. So
Awesome. It's been a privilege. I hope, that there's a nugget of wisdom in there somewhere. But what an
yes.
awesome opportunity. Thank you, Katie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. If you liked something from this episode, hit share and send it to a friend or fellow leader. Don't forget to follow the show and leave a review because it helps leaders like you find us faster. This episode of Think Outside the Boss was produced by Volt Productions. I'll see you next week. And until then, keep moving forward.